Hi everyone, my name is Tara Mulhare and I'm a consultant with the International Trade Center initiative SheTrades. First of all, I'd like to thank Lagos Leather Fair for allowing me to speak today, particularly on one of the hottest topics. How do you export? And when is export right for you? Why am I laughing? Okay. I have been in this industry for over 20 years and been very blessed to work with over 1,000 brands. Yes, 1,000 brands. And I laugh because everyone asks me, no matter how small or how large of a brand, they always say, Tara, I want to meet buyers. How do I meet buyers? I want to export. Show me buyers. And it's so interesting how, but then you ask them the question, well, tell me about your customer. Where's your customer? What market are you trying to get into? No. I'm trying to meet buyers. And I think we forget that a buyer and a customer are really the same thing. They have the same needs. They are looking for the same thing. So if you really don't understand who your customer is, you are in a very bad position. Okay, so let's dial it back here for a second. It's even more so important than ever before to really know who your customer is. Why? This past market during this COVID era, we're still in the fall market. This is the last season, spring 21 market, pardon me. This is the last show of the season. And I can tell you it's been a very, very unique but positive season. Everything moved digitally, which obviously Lagos Leather Fair is as well. And what was very interesting was every buyer was looking to our Instagram and our website. No matter what type of brand you were, they were really gravitating and looking at these items. Why were they doing that? Because they really wanted to know about you as a brand. So they go to the digital marketplace, they go to the virtual showroom, they go to New Order, or they go to New York Now or Ambiente or all these different shows we took part of this past season. And it was really interesting. They go right off the platform, go right to the person's Instagram, and then go right to their website. So you really need to understand your customer, because imagine you don't understand your customer, your marketing and all the different components of your brand, you don't know what you're doing. So you're not going to be able to give the buyer what she wants. Also as well, they were looking at consistency. So consistency is something that you hear me talk about. Those of you that have heard me speak before, I'm obsessed with consistency. Across all touch points of your brand, your operation, your design, you really need to make sure that you're really, really consistent. So you have to understand your customer because she drives all of these different decisions. So this is something that a lot of people really make a mistake on, and it's not going away. Another thing as well that we saw this past market that I think everyone should be aware of too, as you're starting to think about the export market, buyers are really very, very focused on sustainability and social impact. They wanted to see that you were you were able to communicate what made you sustainable. Some buyers, even if you could tell, they Googled what made a brand sustainable and were asking for certifications. They were looking for transparency in your supply chain. And they really wanted to make sure you were able to properly communicate and say what made you sustainable. So, you may be using organic materials, or those of us in leather are using very safe dye processes. Or, what are you doing in the leather world that's making you less of an environmental issue? So particularly in leather, right? It's a hot topic, sustainability. So how are you going to address these buyers' needs? And then also they really wanted to see that social impact. What does your brand do for the community? And I think the cool part is the majority of brands that are participating in Lagos Leather Fair, really, I'm looking at the names, a lot of you are doing such amazing things, and your impact of what you're doing, the jobs that you're supporting, the training that you're doing with your employees. A lot of people, particularly in Nigeria, we do a lot of things for our employees. We support them. We do school fees. We do all types of different things. We house a lot of our employees sometimes too as well. These are things that buyers are looking for. We're doing them already, but we're not doing a good job of communicating them. So you really need to go back to and say, okay, this is what my customer wants. Wow, the buyer now really needs to really understand that I understand who my customer is. She's going to really, the buyer, deep dive into all the components of my brand to make sure that she gets who my customer is. What is my mission statement? What am I about? So you really have to get these things really down before you now begin to start exporting and are starting to export to start to look. Also, too, buyers are in a situation where they don't know what's happening tomorrow, just like us. And I think what we forget is empathy. So we're so focused on go, go, go. We want to export, export, export. Well, we need to make sure that we understand that's a human being. A buyer is a human being. She's trying to handle everything that's happening right now, and she's responding to people that really understand her. So if you give her everything on a silver platter, a perfect Instagram, perfect website, a collection that's fabulous, it's at the right price point, she's going to respond to you. And you communicate to her with, in her language. You're using buzzwords that your customer would be using. So it's really important that you understand that. It's more so than ever. It's not just product driven anymore. You must have a really strong product, really great quality, but you need to really understand your messaging. You have to make sure that all of your marketing is on your A game before you even begin to start that outreach. And again, you have to understand where your customer fits in. There are so many different buyers out there, and they don't have time anymore. And you need to, and just like you really want to make sure you understand. So is your girl a Harrods girl? Is she a Selfridges girl? Is she a Marks and Spencer girl? Is she a 41 Lux girl? Is she a Temple Muse girl? Or is she an Alara girl, right? You need to understand that. And most of us, taking part on this would be in handbags. Well, you kind of need to know, if you're in handbags, what kind of clothing is she wearing, right? What kind of accessories, what price point? What is she, it's really important to know everything about her. Why? You'll make a lot of mistakes. It's great to know what clothing brand she's wearing on top of the handbag brand, because you're able to look at the stockists of all these brands and really begin your outreach. But again, dialing it back, you can't do anything until you know actually who your customer is. What is she like? What types of shops does she go to? What price point does she buy? And, again, what kind of aesthetic? Because buyers really like to see consistency in design. Just like your customer. A customer comes back to you over and over and over again because you have a certain structure. And particularly in bags, where they really like to see a certain style. Well, if you're boho one season, but like drastically boho, and then the next season you're extra structured, well, that's kind of confusing, right? So there has to be some key things that are consistent across your line. So again, it's really, really important that you as a brand know who you are, know who your customer is, and have all the touch points of your brand completely in order. You do not want to even begin until you truly know who your customer is. Have great marketing. Instagram is everything right now. It's not going away. And it's so fascinating how buyers now use this as a selling or as a tool to get to know you. It has to be consistent Instagram. You can't have drastic shifts. And they look at this really more than even anything else that you give them. Even though there's something called a lookbook and a line sheet, the traditional marketing materials, they go back to Instagram, which we are all been finding so fascinating this past season. Before launching into the international market, you have to take a hard look at your product. You have to be honest with yourself. You really need to look at your zippers, your hardware, particularly in leather. You need to make sure they're on the highest level. You cannot have the best leather and have a terrible zipper or terrible hardware, okay? Weight is everything as well. Some people want a really heavy bag, but most of the market don't like a bag that's too heavy, right? So you need to really make sure you understand where you sit in the market. Your stitching, everything that you're doing has to be on a very high level. If you can't deliver samples of that level, how are you going to deliver orders of that level? You have to also take a hard look at your supply chain. A lot of people don't do that. And what happens is they go into the international market before they're ready and they're unable to scale up their supply chain. You really need to understand what you're capable of delivering of. This is very, very, very key. How quickly can you put out an order? And what happens if something goes wrong? Do you have someone to replace a key employee? Because, in the leather world, craftsmanship is everything. Do you fully actually understand the production process of leather? Do you get it? Do you know how to scale? It's very important. This is something that is really, really key, particularly in the leather world. It is very hard to scale. So you need to make sure that you deliver. Buyers don't want to hear excuses. And I'm telling you, I've watched many people who are blessed to get an order, and then they're unable to meet the agreed cancel date between you and the buyer. Well, what is the cancel date? A cancel date is basically when in your contract with the buyer, in that order contract, you've agreed to deliver by a certain date. If you don't meet that date, and you have, sometimes a buyer has the right to reject it by 1 hour, just one day even, So it's really important that you understand that you're going to pay for all these materials, you're going to pay for all of these things, and then guess what? The buyer won't accept it because you didn't uphold your end of the bargain. I've watched so many businesses fail because of this. So it's very important. That's a very vital question you have to ask yourself. Am I really ready? Am I ready? And can my business handle this? Can I handle this? So really take a hard look at everything on your bags, anything with leather, the finishings. Can you order more than one of those things? Sometimes supply chain for us is really, really an issue. So again, scalability of your supply chain, quality of your product, and really can your organization handle this kind of volume of going to the export market? I've watched many people, make mistakes. Let me just double check that I got the dividers. Okay, can make, perfect. I feel like now I've been speaking, or let me just take a moment so you can edit. Where I've actually seen people make it. So I feel like I'm being so negative in my first part of my comments. And where I see people, the factors that make or break people to make it, the people that actually really do the research, really, stalk the buyers. Sorry for that term, but they really, they go on LinkedIn, they learn about them, they learn about the edits, they learn about the store. They really know who their customer is. They've really spent the time, making sure their Instagram is great, spending the time to make sure their website is great, consistency. Then they're able to now, interact with the buyer. They really really did all of this work. They've given the buyer what they've wanted. They've interacted in an empathetic way. It's not just, hey, here's my lookbook. They've done the research. When they've reached out to the buyer, they've said, I sit very well with Chloe and I sit very well with Nancy Gonzalez. And, I really think the following pieces would sit in with your edit. I love your edit that you've done in your store. Those kinds of things, really able to communicate and connect with the buyer, give them what they want. Those people that have spent the time are the ones that I see succeeding. The ones that have done all of the back work, that know that, okay, I can order, 100 of these different, zippers. The hardware here, I can order, how much more of that? Okay. If Johnny gets sick, I have, Alan over here that can replace that person. Okay, wait a second here. I have all of this set in, I'm ready to go. Also, my current customer is protected. I'm ready. I can still handle her business while I'm handling the international market, right? Because you don't want to replace. To be successful, you want to increase your business, not replace your business. So those people that have done all of the research, they know everything about their girl. They've been stalking their customer on Instagram, really learning, watching what the characteristics. They do phenomenal. The people that I see fail are the ones that go, oh gosh, I just can't take my local customer anymore. They don't get me. So, I'm just going to go to export right now. Louise keeps calling out of the store all the time. Oh, this isn't working. Gosh, I'll put that system in place later. You know what? I'm just going to start exporting because that's going to solve all my problems. I don't have time to put an accounting system in place. I don't really have a supplier, but, export's going to solve everything. Then, let's just say they're lucky and they get an order and it's a disaster. So you really have to have that house in order before you invite company, right? You're not going to have your grandmother come to your home if it's a mess. So why would you invite a buyer into your home? Company into your home if it's a hot mess, right? So you really want to make sure that you have your organization, yourself really able to handle this because there's so much communication, right? I'm saying all these different components that you have to do, the Instagram strategies, all these different things that you need to be doing. you need to be able that everything's running around you. Yeah, you're always going to have little hiccups, right? But it shouldn't be that a little hiccup turns into a huge mess, right? So you just want to make sure that you're really ready to handle, it's a lot of work. I think people think you meet that buyer, oh yeah, like just $1 million later. That's not how it works. And now with this day and age in COVID, there's so much more outreach that is required than ever before because you're not meeting them in person, right? So you really have to build this trust, and it's a lot of work, those components of being consistent with everything that you're doing. So yes, you can do it. You can really do well in the export market, but it won't happen tomorrow. Also, we're seeing smaller buys due to COVID because people are afraid to take these huge risks. So that is also something to be aware of. You won't have this instant, whoa, I'm going to have lots of money coming in, even if you're successful in the beginning. It can take almost 2 years to really see the fruits of your labor for the export market. So it's consistency and being able to constantly go and, keep yourself motivated, make sure that everything's running. And again, that you can go, okay, everything's running. I now can focus on this. Because as entrepreneurs, we wear many hats. So you're going to be adding a really big hat. We're talking a bonnet by going into the export market. So you don't want that to pull you down. You want to be able to, that it pulls you up and it brings you, lots of money at the end of the day. That's the most important thing. So good luck. No, I'm teasing. Well, that's a very interesting question, right? I think it's so interesting how the market has shifted even before COVID, the past 8 years. It's been really interesting to see how characteristics of your customer are more important than culture. So yes, am I saying, don't sell red in China, or, there's certain colors and things that you don't do, right? But overall, the core characteristics of your customer are the same. So the mistakes that I see people make is they follow a trend report. The trend says we're going to do black and white this season, all black and white. Well, question for you. If your customer likes bold prints, why would you shift into black and white? So maybe they live in a country where black and white is, if you're doing your research, well, I'm trying to get into, let's say, like Scandinavia. Oh, they really use a lot of black and white and muted colors there. So I'm going to change my whole color palette, right? Well, maybe your customer is sitting there in a Scandinavian country and is going, I miss bold prints and I want bold prints and I can't get them here. Well, now you've totally missed it, right? She's going to see your collection and go, I don't want that. And it's really important that you understand your customer's characteristics versus the trends. So you can take the color trends, you can take a country trend and add, little nuances in there, but it's important to really understand what she wants. I see it time and time again too, where people say, oh, I really, my customer loves purple. Oh, but I'm going into the US and they don't like purple. And you're just like, no, but she's there. Like she's there. So really you have to really understand what your brand represents. And, what does your customer see in your brand? What does she want from you? And you have to really understand those things. And that's where I see many people fail. Another thing is too, as well, connection. Again, like I mentioned, discussing what's happening in the market. This is something that is really, viable right now. Community impact, again, is something that is so huge. It's interesting how the larger brands, like Chloe came out and said this week, I forget the gentleman's name, my goodness, the CEO, but he was just saying this week how Chloe is quietly going to be now really, going and connecting and giving their customer what they want, and community is everything. Well, Chloe isn't doing this because they care. I mean, sorry, Chloe, but they're doing it because their customer wants it. So that's the important part. If you really need to understand the detailed level of what your customer wants before you go into these different markets, because you could really make a mistake, and I see a lot of brands that really drastically change themselves. And that's very hard as a designer to do season after season because, this one buyer wanted this, so this is what we're going to be. Well, that was one buyer, or that was what, one, part of the segment wanted. But in actuality, their customer wanted something else. So that's the most important thing really understanding your customer's taste and making sure that you stay true to that. It was interesting in the jewelry world and in the handbag world, you see statement bags coming and going, right? One season it's small bags, next season it's big bags. And jewelry, it's dainty one season and then big, the next. I've found that the really successful designers in both of those industries, the reason I'm bringing it up is it's very interesting to see how handbags and jewelry, trends kind of go the same. I find it so interesting that all the designers that stayed true to their aesthetic, that didn't, go way at the other end of the pendulum, they're the ones that are the most successful. So if your girl always likes color and totes, why would you go to mini bags? Now, yes, you could have a couple mini bags just to have, but don't drastically change your collection. And that's where I just feel that, it's really cool to see how we're such a global society now. And I think it's really cool how you look at Lagos and you look at New York, and there's a lot of very similar trends. And you go to London and then, the same thing in Lagos. I think it's really cool. There's a customer base that's similar in all the different places in the world. So that's something really to pay attention to. Yes, language you need to be careful with. You have to understand, like in Lagos, in Nigeria, we use sometimes American or British version of English, right? So you just need to make sure those kind of things. You don't want to go to the US and use UK, right? So it's those little nuances, but the overall design part of it, that doesn't change. The characteristics of your customer, no matter where she is in the world, do not really change that drastically. So I've seen a lot of brands, again, not know who their customer is. And you're going to go, okay, Tara, we get it. But do you understand? And this is what happens if you don't know your customer. You go and you do a collection based on a trend report, okay, that doesn't apply to your customer, let's just say. Then what you do is you do this product. You're not really able to do it all the time, actually, and you don't even really believe in it. You do a campaign based on what you think your customer is, but you didn't really do the research. You think that you're at Harrods, but in actuality, your materials and things are not of a Harrods level. Your price point is way, let's say, out of what your customer really would pay. And now you do all of this. You redo your Instagram, you redo your website, and you start doing buyer outreach. And you get no response. And you just spent all of this money. Why? Because you're not that person. So it's really, really important. I've seen that time and time again. I've also met so many people that say to me, I wish I met you sooner, that have spent all their last money to go to a trade show and think that that's going to save their business. And that's the end all be all. Trade shows are not everything. And I think people think you just go to a trade show and it's just going to change your life. This is where, Lagos Leather Fair is an amazing show. The name brings you credibility. The fact that you are participating in such a, an internationally world-renowned show gives you credibility, but you have to do the outreach. You have to do the work. So you really want to make sure you're picking a show that matches your brand, like all of you here today. It makes sense that you're here, but you can't rely on the show. And I see that happen a lot where people don't realize all the outreach that you have to do. The show gives you credibility, but if you don't know which kind of buyers to reach out to on your own, you won't have any traction. So it's really, really scary. And I see that happen a lot where people just think like, okay, I'm going to go to the show. They pick the wrong show. Thank goodness this is a good show, but I've seen people go to the wrong shows, wrong price point, wrong everything. And it all stemmed from not knowing who their customer is. Then I've seen people who really didn't understand their supply chain. And again, they've had all this, they're set, they're ready. They did all the research, they've done everything, they know their customer, they went to the right trade show, they met the right buyer, the order came, and all stuff broke loose. They actually totally didn't understand how long it was going to take them to produce an order of that size. They had supply chain problems. They had logistics problems, which we're seeing a lot now. And then with COVID, they didn't actually properly think of it was going to take them longer because of, social distancing and things that we need to do now that buyers also want to see as well. So it's really important because I've seen people bankrupt their companies because they were not able to deliver with the agreed time, that cancel date that, a buyer gives you a cancel date and says, you have to deliver by this time. They don't want to hear your sob story. They don't care. They have, especially now during COVID, they have to get product out. They have a short period of time to sell it. and they have to do that. So you did all of this, you've invested in the materials, you paid your employees, and guess what? You get nothing. So I've seen that happen a lot. So really make sure you understand your supply chain. Make sure that you understand the capabilities of your organization, and make sure that you personally can handle this extra workload. On top of, really running your local and national business, you have to be able to handle a whole nother bit. And it's a lot. Buyers require a lot of communication, and it doesn't just end when the order arrives to the buyer. There's a lot of communication that goes on after, that a buyer wants to feel that you're connected to them. So if you're unable to do this, then really you're actually, you really could, fall flat on your face. I'm sorry for a terrible term, and bankrupt your organization. So you really want to, you take a breath and you say, I'm really excited to export, but let me do this right. Let me get all my ducks in a row here. I'm not going to rush this decision. I'm really going to take the time, study the industry. I'll be looking at Women's Wear Daily, which is wwd.com. I'm going to be looking at WGSN free white papers to really show me consumer trends. I'm really going to be paying attention to what's happening online, really watching who I think my customer is, really making sure I'm making the right decisions before I go into export. Basically, in order for you to begin export, so you've done all of this. It's actually, I feel like I'm being so negative, but it's actually a great experience. It's a lot of work. I thoroughly enjoy international business. I thoroughly enjoy exporting. And I think what I love so much right now, for me, the most exciting part of being in this world, is it's gone back to the early days of my career. When I was a buyer at Bergdorf's, we would, scour the world to find the best, right? We love finding new brands that were new to the market. Well, the cool part about COVID, one positive, not cool part, excuse me, but an interesting development from COVID has been buyers are having to be different. The consumer is demanding it. So your brands are, especially, in leather, handbags is such a hot category right now. It's amazing to see how handbags are in such demand. It was really hot before COVID, and now it's hot, even hotter. I mean, it's so interesting to see, after, the lockdown in Paris, the people were queuing outside of, LV and Hermes, right? And then I even saw it, I've been in Dublin and I saw the same thing. So it is really interesting to see how, you're in such a hot commodity, and buyers really want to see that. So step one, again, make sure you have a really good Instagram page. You're going to go, okay, Tara, oh my gosh, it's Instagram. But no, again, I'm telling you, it's so cool how Instagram is, a free tool that is allowing you to really tell your story. Again, it used to be back in the day when I started my career, we'd have to wait 3 seasons till we brought someone on. We had to see consistency, right? I get it. By looking at you, I'm able to really see, a good far down about where have you been? Some of you have been in business for a long time. And I can see that on Instagram. I can see the consistency, the messaging. You get it. Again, consistency is everything. Your aesthetic is consistent. You evolve as a brand. You get who your customer is. I see your social impact. So really make sure that your Instagram is a great way of telling, or is fully telling your story. So you want to focus on all the touch points of what you're doing, right? Like I said, they're really, all the buyers are into sustainability and into community impact. So if you're not sustainable, what are you doing for your community? And most of you are doing something. Now, don't put it on there if you're not, but the majority of the brands, I'm recognizing again the names, you're doing this. So make sure the buyers know that. So 1, Instagram. 2, your website looks great. Sorry. And the color story, everything I'm seeing on Instagram, I'm seeing on your website. Buyer, again, wants to see consistency, wants to know I can trust you. You need to be able to understand who to reach out to. So you have all that back ready. You have your Instagram, your website. You have a really good line sheet that's the same color stories as your website and your Instagram. You have a really great lookbook, all digital. And now you start your outreach. So you want to start with at least 25 buyers. I always say your A level would be your Harrods, those, if that's your target price point or your target. The bigger retailers, and that's e-commerce. I say retailers and I mean physical store and e-com together. And then you want your specialty stores, like your Anthropologies of the world that do, medium-sized buys. And then you want to have a list of C's, I call them, and they're the boutiques. I love boutiques. Boutiques are a great way to start really getting into markets and to test. So you really begin to, you have your target list and you begin to research these people. You really go and get to know who the buyers are, get to know the stores. That way, when you're doing your outreach, you can do it via Instagram for the smaller stores. And you want to connect with them. So if you are, in handbags, if they have a necklace that, my gosh, you have that necklace that they're showing at that boutique that week, and your bag has almost the same type of finishings and hardware on it, whoa, that would be so cool. But they look hand in hand. I would literally message privately in DM the boutique, and I'd say, I love this necklace. I have to show you this bag. Oh my gosh, we have so much in common. I just really see, my lines there, and I really love everything your store is about. We really should connect. So that kind of research and that kind of level of outreach, that type of outreach really, really works. And we've had a lot of success doing that. So it's not just blindly reaching out to these stores. It's really waiting for the right opportunity, really, taking the time to get to know them. Really, you even Google the boutique owners, the buyers, and if they have interesting quotes, things that you believe in, you can write that and show them without being a stalker. But there's really great ways of as long as you've done the research. So again, let's just go back. 1, you know your customer. 2, you have a really great product that you're confident in. 3, you have a great Instagram. 4, great website. 5, you have a good lookbook. 6, you have a good line sheet. And then you do the buyer outreach and you have a good list, and you're able, before you, research really more of the buyer outreach, then you do the buyer outreach. But because you've done all of this, you look good. The people you're reaching out to, you'll have common energy with, and you should have success. But I want everyone to remember, it takes time. So buyers watch you, right? They watch you. So you'll see that they follow you back on Instagram. They're going to watch you, and it's just gentle once a month reach outs, to them. And that's the best way, really, seriously. Buyers, again, want to trust you. That's something very, very important. And it's hard now because we can't meet you face to face. So I need to really understand you. Also, another thing too, I forgot to mention is we're really seeing people, a lot of buyers, LinkedIn has been a really great tool. So we found that if you have a really great LinkedIn page that tells all about you, a lot of us have a lot of experience outside of our brands as well. And that then if I Google you, the same information comes up. We've been doing a lot of outreach via LinkedIn as well too. And we found a lot of buyers connect with you and then reach out to Instagram. Why? Again, this kind of interesting COVID world, we're not able to do physical trade shows. It's not like you go book a meeting and go meet them in person. It's a good way for them to judge if they really can trust you and then take the conversation to the next level. So these components are really helpful. But if you don't know who your customer is, right, all this will be a waste. Can you see the chain of you just keep snowballing out of control? So this is a really good way to begin your outreach and to begin your export activities. I highly, highly, highly suggest, getting involved in, if you are a female entrepreneur or business owner, SheTrades, we offer a lot of these great programs. We're running 3 series right now. We're very blessed to be working with Yvonne Watson of Parsons. She's running right now a sustainability and social impact webinar series, which is great because all the buyers want you to have that. So she's showing you how you actually tell that story. Then we have an amazing woman, a great team, Agatha and Robbie from the amazing Rand Studio in London. They've worked with a lot of the big movie houses, great campaigns, governments. They're amazing at storytelling. They're running a series as well. And then I run every Wednesday. It's called The New Market, the virtual B2B, where we really get into what's happening in the marketplace. If it's not SheTrades, then please get involved. NEPC has wonderful programs as well. You should really be, if export is what you want to do, really looking at all the tools that are out there in the market. There's all these great programs. Really make sure as well, before I end for today, but make sure as well that you get involved with other entrepreneurs. I think sometimes we see our industry as competition when in actuality they can be our allies. Problems that you have sometimes, a design thing or your supply chain, it's so important that you get involved. Sometimes too, you're just having a bad day as an entrepreneur. And it's really, really important that you have a support system around you. Sometimes our families don't understand what it's like to be an entrepreneur and our daily struggles. So it's really important that, I would highly suggest if you're, attending or you're presenting at during Legal Southern Fair, really make sure you're meeting and talking to the other entrepreneurs and business owners, because you really need each other, particularly in leather. It's a very, very hard industry. Although it's amazing and successful, the supply chain is one of the toughest parts, as we know. So you really want to make sure your network is quite strong. I went wishing all of you a really great show. And I really want to thank you again all for your time. And thank you to Legal Southern Fair for this great opportunity. Have a wonderful afternoon. Bye-bye.